This is Susan Smith, convicted of murdering her two sons, Michael and Alexander, by drowning them. Reportedly, Smith was having an affair with Tom Finley, the wealthy son of her boss. One day, Finley sent her a letter ending their relationship, stating he was not ready for the responsibility of children. 8 days after the breakup, Smith strapped her sons into their car seats, drove to John D. Long Lake, and let the car roll down into the water.
It's hard to imagine that the car has just vanished.
She then claimed a black man had carjacked her and kidnapped her children.
All he ever told me was, "Shut up or I'll kill you." He said, "Don't say anything else."
For 9 days, she made tearful pleas on national television for their safe return.
To whoever has my children, that they please bring them home.
While her husband David stood beside her, believing her story.
Yes, I believe my wife totally.
9 days into the investigation, Smith confessed to the murders. She admitted to letting her car roll into the lake with both kids still in their car seats.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children.
At trial, Smith's defense attorneys argued she was suicidal and suffering from severe depression, claiming she intended to die with her children but jumped out at the last moment. However, prosecutors presented evidence, including a recreation showing the car floated for 6 minutes before sinking. The jury deliberated for 2.5 hours before finding her guilty on both counts of murder. Smith sobbed as the judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This is Brooke Cruz, convicted of murdering her 8 months pregnant neighbor by cutting the baby from her womb while the mother was still alive. Reportedly, Cruz had lied to her boyfriend, William Hone, about being pregnant. When he discovered the lie in August 2017, Hone told Cruz he knew she wasn't pregnant, and since he'd already told people about the pregnancy, Cruz needed to produce a baby. On August 19th, Cruz lured 22-year-old Savannah Graywind to her apartment under the pretense of helping with a sewing project.
At this point, though, when the police are there the first and then the second time, is Ms. Graywind indeed in the apartment?
Yes, she was.
Where?
She was in the bathroom closet.
You have everything cleaned up at that point, too?
Yes,
Where's the baby?
on the bed next to Will.
Once inside, Cruz provoked an argument and claimed she pushed Graywind, who hit her head and lost consciousness. Cruz then retrieved a knife and began cutting the baby from Graywind's womb.
I started cutting the baby out.
Is she still unconscious during this time?
No, she woke up. I continued cutting, and then I reached in and took the baby out.
When Hone arrived home, Cruz presented him with the infant. According to Cruz's testimony, Hone then retrieved a rope, strangled Graywind.
And he was like, what the is she alive? And I said, I don't know. Please help me. Came back in his underwear with a rope. He put the rope around her neck and he pulled it tight. And he said, if she wasn't dead before, she is now.
The couple hid Graywind's body in their bathroom closet during multiple police searches, then later disposed of her body in the Red River and paraded the baby in public for 5 days. 9 days after Graywind disappeared, kayakers discovered her body wrapped in plastic, snagged in the Red River.
Extensive search efforts by law enforcement and by volunteers, the body of Savannah Marie Graywind was found yesterday.
At trial, a medical examiner testified it was unclear whether Graywind died from blood loss or strangulation. Cruz pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and providing false information, and had no plea agreement with prosecutors. Before sentencing, Graywind's mother delivered an emotional victim impact statement, calling the crime beyond evil.
I get so upset and angry and can't understand how or why these people could have taken my girl from me from us. The pain of losing a child is like no other pain. I now know that pain. My heart is literally broken.
Cruz then addressed the court.
I am guilty, and I deserve every year I get. I just wanted them to know that I am sorry for what I did.
The judge then proceeded to give her the max sentence.
Do you understand all the rights that were read today, ma'am? Yes. The maximum penalty would be life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
Cruz showed no visible emotion as the judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hone pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit kidnapping and was resentenced to 20 years in prison. This is Nicholas Cruz, who was convicted of murdering 17 students and staff members in a high school shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. A month before the attack, Cruz was already preparing. He practiced firing his weapon, perfecting his aim, planning every detail.
When you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am. You're all going to die. Pew, 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 pew.
Prior to the day of the massacre, Cruz recorded a chilling video in which he laid out his intentions.
Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can do a good done. Location is Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida. It's going to be a big event.
On February 14th, Valentine's Day, the then 19-year-old arrived at his former high school armed with an AR-15 rifle. He opened fire in the hallways and classrooms, killing 14 students and 3 staff members.
Oh my God!
The shooting lasted only 6 minutes, but left the school drenched in blood and terror. Security footage captured the chaos as students ran for their lives while Cruz methodically moved through the building.
He got into the 1200 building because that door was unlocked and unstaffed, and that we say that is a security failure.
Hours later, police body cam footage shows his arrest. He was found walking casually in a nearby neighborhood, blending in with fleeing students. Cruz was taken into custody without resistance. In the interrogation room, he spoke to detectives about what drove him to commit the massacre. He claimed a demon inside his head had been telling him to commit violent acts for years. When left alone in the room, he repeatedly punched himself in the face and begged officers to end his life. During the trial, prosecutors presented devastating evidence, and medical examiners described and demonstrated the lethal power of the high-velocity weapon Cruz used. But Cruz's violence didn't stop. While awaiting trial, he attacked a jail guard in an unprovoked assault, further proving his dangerous nature. Cruz pleaded guilty to 17 charges of premeditated murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. But before the judge handed down his sentence, Cruz made some statement.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others. And I am doing this for you, and I do not care if you do not believe me. And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day.
The judge then reads the sentence.
Mr. Cruz, you are remanded to the custody of the Department of Corrections to complete the mandatory life sentences imposed by the court.
However, the life sentence was not enough for the damage done, as some of the victims' families did not hesitate to vent their dissatisfaction.
Today, the wrong verdict was given.
We are beyond disappointed with the outcome today.
This is Jeremy Webster, convicted of opening fire on a family during a road rage confrontation in Colorado. Reportedly, Bigelow was driving her 3 sons to a dentist appointment when she tried to pull over for an emergency vehicle, but Webster became angry and yelled at her for entering his lane. Instead of driving away, he followed her into the dental office parking lot, stepped out of his vehicle, screamed at her again, then pulled a gun.
And I yelled to the boys, "He's got a gun, run!" And then I heard the gun go off, and I dropped to the ground. I was shot again in the head.
After shooting Bigelow, he then fired at her children. One was critically injured, another escaped, but the bullets claimed the life of Vaughn.
He knew exactly what he was doing, and he should be held accountable.
Webster fled the scene after the attack, but was captured later that day after his license plate was traced through nearby surveillance cameras. At trial, his defense insisted he was in the midst of a psychotic episode and not in control of his actions.
He had a mood disorder that began at a very young age, and it progressed, as it does. And eventually, he reaches his 20s, and he has schizoaffective bipolar disorder.
Prosecutors argued that Webster acted with intent by following the victims, parking behind them, and firing deliberately at close range.
Mr. Webster is using insanity as an excuse for the cold-blooded murder of a 13-year-old child, for his attempt to kill everyone else that was on scene.
During sentencing, Megan Bigelow faced her son's killer and addressed the court.
All his friends are graduating high school right now and going to college. And every time I get one of those graduation cards, I burst into tears.
Then the jury returned with their decision.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jeremy Webster, guilty of attempt to commit murder in the first degree after deliberation.
The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Webster showed no visible emotion as the sentence was read. This is Monica Simmonelli and Robert Baker. They were both convicted of murdering Fabio Simmonelli, a celebrity hairstylist at his home in Woodland Hills. The two plotted to kill Monica's husband, collect a life insurance policy worth $1.6 million, and continue their affair without interference.
They killed Fabio. They killed Fabio.
During the murder, Baker and a third accomplice, Christopher Austin, stabbed Fabio multiple times on his backyard patio as he sat enjoying the evening. His body was left there for his daughter Isabella to discover when she returned home, staged to look like a robbery gone wrong.
There was evidence that a burglary had occurred. It was what we call a hot corral burglary murder, and that's what it was initially reported as.
However, Monica's attempt to claim the insurance money shortly after Fabio's death drew early attention from investigators and raised suspicion that his death wasn't a robbery gone wrong, as initially reported.
She goes to the patio and lets out a scream. Sees her father slumped over in his favorite chair. There's blood everywhere.
After their arrest, the third accomplice, Austin, testified against Monica and Baker to obtain a reduced sentence.
He said, we're gonna go up to the thing. I got a call. That's when he kind of started revealing the whole plan. It's like, remember the girl? I was like, what about it? It's like, yeah, her husband's there.
How did he know she was there? He was there.
I believe the woman called him and told him, and he told me.
And what makes you believe that, or just?
It's what I believe.
Okay, did he tell you she said he's home?
Yeah.
Did he use those words?
Yeah, it's like, he's home now.
Monica took the stand, claiming she had nothing to do with the planning or murder of her husband. Fabio's family spoke, describing Monica as a soul devoid of any humanity.
In all my worst nightmares, I could never have fathomed this calculated plan. Monica, you are a demon.
Then the jury returned with their decision.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Monica Simmonelli, guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A.
Here you see Monica crying as the guilty verdict was read. The judge upheld the jury's decision and sentenced her to life without parole, while Baker served his own life sentence for carrying out the brutal killing. This is Timothy Bliefnick, convicted of murdering his estranged wife Becky when he was seeking to escape their divorce. Timothy had appeared on Family Feud, where he joked that his biggest mistake on his wedding night was saying, "I do."
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do. Not my mistake. Not my mistake. I love my wife.
Shortly before Becky disappeared, a disturbing Google search history showed he had looked for how to make a homemade silencer.
His phone shows searches for the following: how to open my door with a probe, how to make a homemade pistol silencer.
Reportedly, Timothy bought bicycles under the fake name, rode to Becky's house, climbed to a second-story window with a crowbar, broke in, and shot her 14 times.
He pulled the trigger not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 14 times.
Becky's father later discovered her body when she failed to pick up the children from school.
I ran up the stairs, and since she supposedly was sick, I went to the bedroom to see if she was laying down. Didn't see anything in her bedroom, went into the attached bathroom, and that's when I found her body lying on the floor. She looked like she was dead.
Timothy maintained his innocence throughout the trial, declining to testify in his own defense. Forensic evidence proved shell casings found at the crime scene matched 27 casings discovered in Timothy's basement. Also, his fitness tracker showed gaps in activity that corresponded with times he was riding to Becky's house. Prosecutors alleged that the defendant wanted to avoid paying child support and maintenance in their divorce. Becky's mother didn't hold back her anger as she made a statement.
Your soul is black with hate. Your heart has only love for itself. You should never be allowed to be free again.
The jury found him guilty of all counts brought before him.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Timothy Bliefnick, guilty of first-degree murder, signed by the 4-person and 11 jurors.
Timothy showed no visible reaction as the guilty verdict was read. During sentencing, the judge loudly counted from 1 to 14 to emphasize each bullet Timothy fired into his wife.
And you shot her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times.
The judge sentenced him to natural life in prison with no possibility of parole. This is Sarah Hartzfield, a 50-year-old Texas woman convicted of murdering her 5th husband, Joseph Hartzfield, with a fatal dose of insulin. The couple had been married for 11 months when the deadly plan was set in motion. During their marriage, Joseph complained to his family that he feared Sarah would kill him in his sleep. One day, Sarah administered a toxic dose of insulin to her husband, who was diabetic and taking medication that made him more sensitive to insulin. And this led to his death.
She told that deputy that she gave Joseph Hartzfield 2 insulin pens at his request the night before.
At first, his death was presumed to be related to a medical issue, so Sarah thought she had gotten away with murder. But investigators grew suspicious and uncovered her past pattern of violence. Reportedly, in 2018, she had fatally shot her then-fiancé, claiming self-defense. With Joseph dead, prosecutors had evidences linking her to a second deadly relationship.
The defendant thought she was the smartest person in any room and that no one could catch her, and that she was going to get away with it because that's what she's always done.
Evidences found by the prosecutors include toxicology reports that showed Joseph's insulin levels were abnormally high. In court, over 30 witnesses testified, painting a picture of a calculating woman with a deadly history. Prosecutors also revealed hundreds of jail messages she sent to media outlets, showing her attempt to control her narrative. Sarah pleaded not guilty, claiming Joseph's death was accidental. Her defense argued it could be linked to his own health issues.
They have no evidence that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. We spent half of these days on extraneous offenses, calling Sarah a bad person, but they still can't prove that Sarah administered insulin to Joe.
The jury deliberated after 7 days of testimony, and when the jury returned, the verdict was clear.
We, the jury, having found the defendant guilty of murder, assess her punishment at confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for life, and in addition to such confinement, assess a fine in the amount of $10,000.
Court footage showed Hartzfield's face showing little emotion while standing silently. The judge agreed with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Sarah to life in prison. This is Tyrese Harris, convicted of second-degree murder after a road rage confrontation turned deadly in New Hampshire. Reportedly, Harris cut off 45-year-old Jamal Kardakovich while driving, triggering him to honk his horn, and Harris responded by throwing an eyeglass cleaner bottle at the man's truck.
His son said that this car basically cut him off, and he was making stop-and-go moves, kind of provoking him.
Kardakovich then stepped out of his vehicle, approached Harris's car, and spat in his face. Seconds later, Harris pulled out a gun and shot Kardakovich point blank in the face. Inside the truck were his son and nephew, who saw the whole thing.
As he approached the vehicle, he was shot.
During the trial, Harris's defense argued that he acted in self-defense, claiming he feared for his life and his pregnant fiancée, who was present at the time. Before his sentencing, he apologized to the family, saying he wished he could undo everything.
There hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about the horrible events that took place that day. An apology can't possibly do any justice to what has happened.
The victim's daughter takes the stand to address the court.
Growing up, I always dreamed of my father there by my side through all my milestones. To wake up this morning and every day for the rest of my life, I lose my father, my anchor, and my dream.
The jury found him guilty on all counts, and Harris stood still and sad as the judge sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison. This is Scott Peterson, who was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife Lacey Peterson and their unborn son Connor at their home in California. Peterson reported Lacey missing on Christmas Eve, claiming she disappeared while he was on a fishing trip, then later attended a party as if nothing had happened.
A man not looking for caring about his missing pregnant wife, but a man who was more interested in our attractive babysitter.
However, months later, the bodies of Lacey and baby Connor washed ashore near the very location where Peterson said he had been fishing that day. He was later arrested and charged for murder after investigators uncovered his affair with Amber Fry, a massage therapist. He had told he was a widower before Lacey even disappeared.
Scott told me he was not married.
During the trial, prosecutors argued that Peterson killed his wife to escape his marriage and pursue his relationship with Fry.
You know, what really struck me in listening to those tapes is how little Scott Peterson cared about his wife and child.
Peterson maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings, claiming he had nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance.
I wasn't the last one to see Lacey that day. There were so many witnesses who saw her walking in the neighborhood after I left.
He also claimed the murder was connected to burglary across the street.
The cops just never followed up on the burglary across the street. The police failed to find my family.
The jury then read their verdict.
We find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Lacey Denise Peterson.
However, the verdict wasn't what he expected, and this was his reaction.
I was staggered by it. I had no idea it was coming.
The judge sentenced Peterson to death. However, his death sentence was later overturned, and he was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is Ethan Crumbley, who pleaded guilty in court for the murder of 4 classmates when he was only 15 years old. Crumbley was a student at Oxford High School in Michigan. 4 days before the massacre, his father purchased a 9mm handgun as an early Christmas gift for him. Video footage shows him at a gun range, practicing with the very weapon he would use to kill his classmates.
He was definitely smiling when he was shooting the firearm, yes.
Reportedly, one morning, a teacher discovered alarming drawings on Crumbley's math worksheet, images of a gun, bullets, a person who appeared shot, with the words, "blood everywhere," and "the thoughts won't stop, help me." His parents were called to the school but refused to take him home. About 2 hours later, the 15-year-old retrieved the gun from his backpack, walked into the bathroom, and emerged with the weapon loaded. He opened fire in the hallway, killing 4 students and wounding 7 others, including a teacher. After his arrest, his mother confronted him in the interrogation room.
Why?
She broke down in tears as the gravity of what her son had done became clear. Defense attorneys later attempted to argue that Crumbley was experiencing a psychotic episode at the time of the shooting, claiming he was not in control of his actions. But prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence of premeditation.
Judge, a preliminary review of the defendant's social media accounts his cell phone, as well as other document evidence recovered on scene, show that this defendant planned the shooting. He deliberately brought the handgun that day with the intent to murder as many students as he could.
Crumbley pleaded guilty to all charges. Meanwhile, a statewide manhunt was launched after his parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, failed to turn themselves in. Police body cam footage shows officers arresting them in a Detroit warehouse where they had been hiding. Following the arrest, the parents appeared in court facing involuntary manslaughter charges in the deaths of the 4 students. Prosecutors argued they enabled the massacre by purchasing the gun, ignoring warning signs, and refusing to remove him from school on the day of the shooting. Both parents were later convicted and sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison, making them the first parents in U.S. history to be held criminally responsible for their child's mass school shooting. At Ethan Crumbley's sentencing hearing, he stood before the judge and spoke.
My actions were because of what I chose to do. My parents, they did not know, and I did not tell them what I planned to do, so they're not at fault. I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do. I have lied, been not trustworthy. I've hurt many people. Any sentence that they ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me, because I want them to be happy and I want them to feel secure and safe, and I do not want them to worry another day, because I really am sorry.
The judge showed no leniency during the sentencing. At just 17 years old, Crumbley was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is Melanie Maguire, convicted of murdering her husband, William Maguire, when she was seeking to escape her marriage. Melanie worked at a fertility clinic where she began an affair with Dr. Bradley Miller, a married physician.
He was so kind. I'd come back to my desk after a long meeting with a patient, and there'd be lunch sitting on my desk waiting for me.
The plan was simple and calculated. Shoot her husband and dismember his body, place the remains in suitcases, then dispose of them.
After all these years, how could somebody think that I did that?
Shortly before Williams disappeared, disturbing Google search history showed she had looked for potential ways to silently get rid of him.
What bothered me was that Melanie never reached out and said, "Hey, Bill's missing."
Reportedly, one night, Melanie shot her husband twice inside their apartment, dismembered his remains, and placed them into 3 suitcases. She then transported the suitcases to Chesapeake Bay, where she dumped them into the water, believing the remains would not incriminate her. But forensic evidence proved otherwise, as sawdust containing Williams' DNA was discovered in her vehicle. Also, a 10-inch hair of her and particles of red nail polish was found in one of the suitcases, directly connecting her to the murder.
There were different parts of the body. So in one suitcase, there was kind of a torso with the arms and head still attached. In a second suitcase, there was the pelvis area, and in the third suitcase, there was really the legs down.
Prosecutors alleged that the defendant wanted to end her marriage to Bill, but also had concerns about the high cost of her divorce, so she killed him.
She was nervous, she was visibly shaking, she made expressions like she was crying, but she never had a tear in her eye.
Melanie maintained her innocence throughout the trial, claiming she had nothing to do with her husband's death.
He said he was leaving and he wasn't coming back. He would say things like that all the time. I didn't actually believe it was the last time I was ever going to see my husband.
Even her friends defended her, stating she wasn't capable of killing.
The prosecution, the media, and the internet blogs. That creation, that fiction, bears no resemblance to Melanie.
However, the jury found her guilty of all counts brought before her.
How do you find as to the count of the indictment charging Melanie Maguire with the murder of William Maguire between on or about April 28, 2004 and on or about May 5, 2004 in the township of Woodbridge, Middlesex County, New Jersey, elsewhere and within the jurisdiction of this court?
Guilty.
Maguire broke down in tears as she learned she'll be going away for a long time. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 63 years. This is Chad Dorman, convicted of murdering his 3 young sons at their family home in Ohio. Reportedly, Dorman returned home early from work and told his wife Laura this was his last good meal.
Defendant says to Laura that this will be my last good meal. Laura begins to worry that this is a statement that he may be contemplating suicide.
After lunch, he asked his wife and their 3 sons, Clayton, Hunter, and Chase, to join him in the bedroom for a nap. After they laid down together, Dorman opened his gun safe, retrieved a rifle, and shot Hunter twice. Laura tried to help Hunter while screaming for the other 2 boys to run, and Clayton fled through the back door, but Dorman chased him into a nearby field, shot him from behind, then approached him as he lay injured on the ground and fired a bullet into his head. Dorman's 14-year-old stepdaughter, Alexis, who had witnessed the first shots, ran after Clayton, telling him to keep running, and watched as her stepfather executed him. She then rushed back inside, grabbed 3-year-old Chase, and tried to escape to the road. Dorman followed her and aimed the rifle at her head, ordering her to put Chase down before he tried to fire but was out of ammunition. So Chase ran to his mother, who was now outside trying to save Clayton. Dorman reloaded his weapon as Laura grabbed the rifle barrel to stop him, but he shot her through the thumb, forcing her to release Chase. Dorman then shot the 3-year-old once in the head.
I just seen the kids out playing yesterday, like the little boy was riding his go-kart like he does all the time. They were good kids. He was just a very angry man. Like, he just was always yelling at his wife and his kids.
When deputies arrived minutes later, body camera footage shows Dorman sitting calmly on the front steps with his rifle beside him.
Stand up! Stand up now!
After his arrest, the detectives asked if he shot his sons, and he answered no.
Did you shoot your son?
Yeah.
Who did?
During the investigation, prosecutors revealed Dorman had been planning the murders 8 months before the killings, calling it the most horrifying crime they had ever seen.
We're still discovering facts, but the evil horror of what we know is impossible to process.
At trial, prosecutors originally sought the death penalty. However, Dorman's defense entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming he was suffering from severe mental illness and was delusional at the time.
Do we still know why Chad did this?
No idea. Don't know why. That will probably never be answered.
After more than a year of legal proceedings in court, Dorman accepted a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty and pled guilty to 5 charges. Before sentencing, Alexis confronted her stepfather with her victim impact statement.
Chad, I trusted you with my life, and honestly, I looked up to you more than anyone. I saw you as my dad, not just a stepdad, because it hurts to know I will never get to experience another day with my 3 brothers, or to make any memories anymore, because their innocent lives were taken away so quickly and horribly by their own father.
His wife, Laura, also didn't hold back her emotions.
I was injured that day, fighting with every ounce of my body to just make it stop. I struggle every day, knowing I was not successful in doing so. And now I have to live with this and wonder what more I could have done to save them.
The judge then read the sentence.
Count 1, I'll impose a prison sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. No fine will be imposed. As count 2, it'll be a life prison term without the chance of parole. And count 3, it'll be life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Dorman showed no visible reaction as the judge sentenced him to life in prison. This is Lorie Vallow Daybell, convicted of murdering her 2 youngest children. Reportedly, in September 2019, 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and his 16-year-old sister Tylee Ryan vanished from their home in Idaho.
Where are your kids? No comment? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
When JJ's grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, couldn't reach their grandson, they requested a welfare check in November 2019.
Stood up and I said, "Where are the children? Where are the children?"
give us back our children.
During investigation, police found she had recently married Chad Dorman, whose wife had mysteriously died just weeks before. When officers asked about the children, Lorie lied and said JJ was staying with a friend in Arizona. 9 months later, the children's bodies were found buried on Chad Dorman's Idaho property.
Found dead, burned, mutilated, and dismembered, and buried like animals.
At trial, prosecutors revealed that Lorie and Chad believed the children had become possessed and needed to be eliminated so the couple could be together and prepare for the apocalypse.
Are
you okay?
The jury found Lorie guilty on 6 counts. Before sentencing, family members delivered emotional victim impact statements, calling Lorie a monster and begged for the maximum sentence.
JJ and Tylee could have been with us living happy lives. Instead, she took all that away, all because she is a money-hungry, power-mongering monster.
Lorie then addressed the court.
I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world.
The judge was appalled by her justifications, noting she was in a bizarre religious rabbit hole.
You simply have no remorse for it, even sitting here today.
The judge then read the sentence.
The charge you were convicted of, the first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan, you are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole.
Lorie stood still, emotionless, as the judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Chad Dorman was found guilty and sentenced to death. This is Dean Capsales, convicted of murder after a road rage confrontation turned deadly in Belmont. Shortly before the incident, Capsales and Henry Tapia had exchanged angry gestures over a turn signal before both men pulled over and argued until Tapia began walking back to his car. But before he could get in, Capsales shouted a racial slur, drove at Tapia, and dragged him some distance, then fled the scene.
No, he was just in pain. He said, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm having a hard time breathing.
Reportedly, Tapia later died at a hospital, and Capsales turned himself in 30 minutes later. At trial, Capsales' defense claimed it was an accident, but evidence from a Ring doorbell camera proved otherwise.
There was a Ring doorbell near the scene of this incident, and it captured the audio of the interaction between the victim and the defendant. The defendant can be heard calling the victim of a series of derogatory terms.
The jury found him guilty on 3 counts, including second-degree murder. Before sentencing, Capsales apologized for using such a horrible word.
Language like that is disgraceful, and I'm very ashamed of myself for using such horrible words.
The judge noted they were adults who should have handled it better.
Both men should have known better. They were both grown-ups.
The judge then read the sentence.
Sorted by the court that on count 1, you've been punished by confinement at the Susan Baranowski Correctional Institution for life, with the possibility of parole after 15 years.
Capsales showed no emotion as the judge sentenced him to life in prison. After sentencing, his fiancée insisted he was threatened and never said the racial slur.
Yes, the N-word is inappropriate, but Dean did not come out of that car screaming a racial slur. Mr. Tapia threatened him.
This is Melody Ferris, who was convicted of murdering her husband Gary Ferris on their property after 38 years of marriage. Reportedly, the two had been married for decades, yet they lived completely separate lives, as Melody had taken multiple secret lovers during the marriage. On their property, Melody shot and killed her husband, then burned his body in a fire pit, believing the remains would be unidentifiable and her crime would go undetected. But her plan unraveled when Scott, their son, discovered the burned remains and contacted authorities. A bullet found in a rib bone later established it was a homicide. However, Melody maintained her innocence throughout the trial, claiming she had nothing to do with her husband's death, and even accused her son of committing the murder.
Not only did I not do this, I know you did. I know Scott killed his father. He took my husband, the father of Chris.
You can see the shock in Scott's face when she made the statement. Scott denied any involvement in his father's death, and investigators found no evidence whatsoever linking him to the murder. Melody's defense argued the evidence was circumstantial and that others could have committed the murder. However, the jury found her guilty on all counts.
We, the jury, as the count 5, we find the defendant guilty.
The judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. At 64 years old, Melody Ferris will spend the rest of her life behind bars in a Georgia state prison. This is Preston Walls. At just 18 years old, he was charged with murder after opening fire at Starts Right Here, an alternative educational program in Iowa. Walls attended Starts Right Here, a nonprofit youth outreach and education center designed to help at-risk teens get back on track. It was meant to be a safe space for second chances. Reportedly, one fateful day, Walls walked into the program with a gun. Without warning, he opened fire on his fellow students and the program's founder. 2 students were killed, and the program founder, Will Keeps, was seriously injured but survived. After the shooting, he drove away with his getaway driver, but police body cam footage showed he was later arrested while running into the woods.
Let's see your hands! Let me see your hands! Show me your hands!
In his defense, he testified that he felt harassed and threatened by the victims, claiming he didn't want to die that day at the hands of the victims.
I would have to come back tomorrow, and I was scared to walk out of that school at 1 o'clock. They waited outside the school for me before, talking about what they was finna do. I thought it was about to go down.
So you thought they were gonna start shooting at you right then?
Yeah.
Before sentencing, Walls took the stand and addressed the court.
My actions have changed Will's life and the lives of Rashad and Gianni's families forever, and I'm truly, truly sorry.
In court, the jury read the verdict.
So as to count 1, form of verdict number 2, we the jury find the defendant Preston Malik Walls guilty of murder in the 2nd degree. Count 2, form of verdict number 17, we the jury find the defendant Preston Malik Walls guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
You could see tears rolling down his face as the jury's verdict was announced. The judge sentenced him to 65 years in prison, with at least 40 years before he is eligible for release.